Hello and welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Travel Coffee Break. I'm Alistair Mackenzie and I'll get rid of that screen there. There we go. And I've got a couple of guests with me. Mike Young, as usual, has popped in, although he's not going to do one of his destination destination slideshows, I think is the way to put them, this week. He's just popping in to be here as a double header with me. And also Sophie Kallenberg, who was in Athens last week at the TBEX conference, which was a mighty affair, really. It was 800 delegates, of which 65% were bloggers, and the remaining 35% were tourism and travel industry folk. So it was quite a number of people there, and we were all in conference on the conference days were the Friday and Saturday, but there was a kind of a build-up beforehand. Some people arrived almost a week or 2 weeks beforehand, and several people are still on, I think, press trips afterwards. So it's been quite a week. But I thought what we'd do this week, while we've got a spare episode here, is just talk about our impressions of Athens. Mike, you haven't been before, so you can ask intelligent questions.
Yeah, no, I've never been to Greece or to Athens, so yeah, I'm real excited to hear what you guys have to say about your trip in Athens.
Excellent. Okay. Well, it turns out that both Sophie and I got in, I think, on the same day, on Wednesday last week. So, Sophie, was it your actually? First, before we do all that, Sophie, tell us about you. Tell us about your blog and what you do.
Well, my blog is Wonderful Wanderings. I've been running it for the past 2 years now, and I focus specifically on travel tips for people with full-time jobs. Now, that may sound broad, but the thing is that a lot of bloggers don't work full-time. They travel full-time or they're freelancers. So what I focus on is trips and tips that can be done in 2 weeks' time, in 1 week time, during a short weekend city trip. That's about it.
Oh, that's a good idea. So condensed, trip plans. Yeah. And do you actually suggest itineraries?
Yes, I'm actually, well, I haven't done really detailed itineraries in the past, but I'm working on some now. So you have the scoop here, because I haven't announced this anywhere yet. But I'm working on putting together itineraries based on posts that I've done in the past and destinations I will visit in the future.
And will those be suggestions, or will you do that in collaboration with tour operators? So in effect, they become kind of your branded products.
It might be both. I'm still working on the details at the moment, so I can't really answer that right now. But it will probably be a combination of both.
Excellent. I'm really pleased to hear that. I mean, I should know what your site is like. It's been a while since I've been to have a look at it. But that it is something that I wrote about and was actively suggesting, I don't know, 2 years ago, saying, well, if bloggers have expertise in particular areas, particularly in their niche, be it a geographic one or a particular style of travel or something like that, then shouldn't they be actually branding their own tours? And sure enough, pretty much as I did it, Gary Arndt started with a sort of a branded tour in the G-Adventures portfolio, but it was a photographic tour.
Yeah.
In America, and it sold very well. I think he had 50 people on it, and
yeah, it was very successful. I remember.
Yeah. So good. Oh, excellent. I'm really pleased to hear that. So when you got into Athens, is it your first time in Athens?
It was my first time in Athens, but not my first time in Greece. I'd already been to Rhodes, Zakynthos, and Corfu, and I went to Crete before I came to Athens. But it was my first time in Athens.
You were one of the group who went with, I think it was was it Aegean Airlines or who?
It was a house trip.
It was house trip. That's right.
Yeah, house trip and Viator.
And what was your impression of Crete?
Oh, I loved it. But I loved the other 3 Greek islands I visited as well. We only got to spend 2 full days in Crete, so I definitely want to go back because I only saw a small part of the island. But what was cool is that they had rental cars for us, So one day we were free and we could just go out and explore the island and visit some beaches and stop at some little churches. So that was nice.
Excellent. That's exactly what you want. Mike, jump in anytime.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic to have rental cars available to tour the island. That sounds like I said, unbelievable.
What was your impression, Sophie? What were you expecting of Athens? Because the interesting thing about Athens is that, as I think what's it called? This is Athens. The Athens Tourist Board has been suggesting is that of course Athens is somewhere that people kind of pass through on their way out to the islands. It's not somewhere where they stay. So in that sense, you were very typical. After you go to Crete, either by air or which I don't know, sure which way you went. But the point is that is the typical thing. So what was your impression or thoughts of Athens before you went?
Well, before I went, I thought that I would really dislike it. I had heard so much negative things about Athens, that it was a dirty city, that it was a crowded city, that there was so much pollution, that there was so much poverty. And then I got there, and maybe partially because I had such a negative idea of it beforehand, but I fell in love instantly. I really love the city, and I really plan on going back. So I think I'm going to try to go back next year and probably do a Crete-Athens combination again.
So what was it that made you suddenly turn around like that? Was it some particular experience, or was it some encounter, some view, some?
The day that we arrived very early in the morning. We had I shared a rental apartment with Jennifer from Moi Mes Souliers. We just dumped our suitcases, had a quick lunch, and headed out to the Acropolis. So we visited the Acropolis, and immediately we got this great view over the entire city, with all the white houses and the mountains in the background. And then when we visited the Acropolis, which I thought, by the way, would be really busy, but it wasn't. We just wandered around the Monastiraki area, which was lovely, which had tons of streets that had no traffic at all, tons of little bars, boutiques, a lot of great street art. So I felt like I didn't need anything to entertain me in Athens. The city itself provided enough entertainment just by the way it was constructed and just by the liveliness of it.
Oh wow, you really got stuck in very quickly, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
So I'm going to come back to the Acropolis because it's one of the obvious sort of must-do things. But I'm just wondering how you got on with the transport, and I ask because the way to get in from the airport, one of the ways to get in, if you're not going to take a taxi or something like that, is to take the metro. And I think that's what most people did. I had it in my mind that I was going to make use of trams much more than. In fact, I don't think I used them at all.
I only used the subway.
Yeah, but everybody, when we got there, everybody was saying, actually, don't bother with the trams. Just go, because they get gummed up in the traffic anyway. Just go with the subway. Did you find the subway easy?
Yeah, I found it super easy. We were lucky because my apartment was actually right by the Megaron and the Megaron subway station, so I could walk to the conference. And then the Megaron was on the blue line, which was a very central line to the city, which made it easy to switch at Syntagma, which was a central hub within the city. So I never waited longer for a subway than 10 minutes, and that was at night. And okay, sometimes they were full of people, especially in the evenings, but it was less bad than London, for example.
We should say that
the subway system, I didn't feel, how to say it, like it wasn't dirty at the subway. I didn't feel unsafe at night or something like that. Yeah, definitely. Good experience.
What was the time to get from the airport to, let's say, the center of the city with the subway, and what was the cost?
It was about 40 minutes, and it was €8 one way.
Oh, that's not bad.
So there were first 4 stops that were out of the center, which had quite some time in between them, and then you reached kind of the center of Athens, and there were a bunch of stops before my stops. So it was about 40 minutes on the subway from the airport to the.
That's a fair amount of time, but €8 is fairly inexpensive. So that's at least, you
Yes,
know.
definitely. If you compare with Heathrow Express, for example, or even the airport train in Belgium.
Okay.
And you can get a pass as well. If you plan in advance and you go to this is Athens, you can buy your tickets and things for getting around generally on the metro, but also for doing the journey in from the airport ahead of time.
I was wondering, Alistair, do you know we got those tickets for 5 days on the subway, and they were €10. Do you
Oh,
know
wow.
the standard price, or if we got a discounted tickets? Because I don't find €10 a lot at all for 5 days of limited use.
€10 is very cheap. Yes, I honestly don't know if that was a special rate or not, but
I'll
either
have to
way,
look it up.
it was. They were very good. And Mike, the answer to your next question, because you and I both really like detail on this, for anybody who does use the metro, it's one of those validate your ticket systems. So once you've gone, when you go the first time, you stamp it, and then after that, there's no barriers or anything. You just walk on. But heaven
Just
help
walk
you
on
if you,
through.
yeah, if you haven't
And
got
is it electronic verification, or is it just like a mechanical, like a handwritten one, or?
It stamps the date, so we had a ticket for 5 days, so you validate it, and then it prints the date of your
It puts
validation
the
on
date
the
on
ticket.
it. Okay.
From then
Okay.
on, it lasts for 5 days.
Now, that's a pretty good deal for 10. You know, I don't know if, like I said, if that's your cost because you guys went to TBEX or if that was just the normal cost, but €10 for 5 days is quite a bargain.
Definitely.
And it is definitely the way to get about. That we should say that even though, Sophie, you're absolutely right. I mean, I didn't feel in any way uncomfortable on the metro, but there have been numerous instances of people, particularly when it's crowded, of getting things nicked out of open bags and the like. And in fact, we had two delegates I know within the first 24 hours who had stuff nicked. So it's worth making sure your bags are zipped up at least. But then I think that probably holds true for many of the world's metro systems. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
Belgium is actually, you know, quite famous, especially Antwerp, for people getting their stuff taken, or even Brussels as well.
Yeah.
I don't know, actually. Each time I have someone visiting Belgium, they're always asking me, well, Brussels, is it really that unsafe? I've never heard of incidents happening to Belgian people in Brussels. Well, maybe one tops. I've never heard anything about Antwerp. I think maybe they target you more if they notice that you're a tourist and that you're not Belgian. But then again, I think those are the kind of stories that always pop up when you search for things online. Those are the kind of stories people will always mention, even if it's maybe the first time in 10 years of travel that they're being pickpocketed. So it's possible, of course. I mean, I think it happens in every big city, and it probably happens in Belgium in all cities as well. But I can't comment on it because I've never had a negative experience.
And tourists are, stand out as being vulnerable anyway. So it's bound to be that way. The metro in from the airport is, a target whichever city you're going to. So.
Well, I noticed that because I took the subway a lot during the 5 days I was in Athens, and never did I see anyone beg, except for my trip back from the city to the airport. And of course, when I arrived, it was very early in the morning. There were not a lot of people. But then when I went back, it was mid of the afternoon, and there were people playing music, people trying to sell stuff. It was really remarkable that it only happened on that specific subway line.
One thing I did think about the subway is that everything was written in both Greek alphabet and English, but I personally find the names really hard work, and that's because they I don't know what it is, because they don't kind of make sense to me. So you mentioned I think syntagma or Mustakis and I had real trouble trying to remember the names when I was checking in which direction the tube was going to, for instance. Unless it was Piraeus, I kept on having to look it up and look it up again because it was going into my head and then out again in the same sort of pace that a password would. It didn't make sense, so it didn't stick in there. So I found that hard. I found I had to keep on looking at my little map. And in fact, I wound up writing notes all over my little map just so I could find it quickly, and I knew which direction I was going in if I was going to places. But otherwise, I think the metro works really well. I'm going to tackle a question from Ron Marder here, because you never know, he may have to disappear in the next 5 minutes, so even if it's slightly out of sequence. Ron is asking, saying many thanks for the Athens details explainer. The question is, what are the recommended local foods, and are there any good markets to visit? What do you think then, Soph?
Of course, a typical Greek salad. And then there's where I had this issue. I had amazing food in Greece, and I couldn't remember the name of any of it. It always says Greek salads, and then the other stuff is just written in like Greek or phonetic, I don't know. And I've had so many good things. You should definitely get zucchini pie. They have these great pies, which are, the bottom isn't dough, but it's potato, and then it's just layers of spinach and zucchini and cheese. They also have these amazing little spinach. Well, yeah, it's like mini spinach pies with dough and again cheese and spinach. Or of course, there are pastries. There's a famous baklava, but they have so much more than just a baklava. So yeah, I think if you go anywhere where you see locals going, you'll definitely get some great food.
Absolutely. No, I agree. One thing that I realized quite quickly was that, of course, in common with the rest of Greece, the islands in particular, Athens is not far from the sea. It may be slightly inland, but it's not far from the sea, and so seafood is a big thing. And all the restaurants that I went to had really good seafood offerings, so absolutely. In terms of the markets, we were very lucky. We were slightly spoiled because on the first sort of main night, which would have been the Thursday night, we went to this extraordinary place called Technopolis, which he said, I'm just trying to find the showcase app because I can show you where the actual, here we are, Technopolis website is, so you should be able to see that if you're viewing on the right-hand side. Technopolis is a very interesting area because I think it was a former, I don't know, it was a gasworks or something? Factory. Yeah. And it's been converted into a kind of an arts and culture center, an events center, and so we had this chance to kind of walk between various buildings, in which in one building there was all these rock bands playing, and I got the impression that there's a lot, when we weren't occupying the place, that there was a regular program of concerts at Technopolis.
Wow.
And then in another building we had this kind of I suppose you call it a food market. It was food suppliers, local makers, cheese makers, suppliers of food, wine makers, and the like, with stalls, lots of stalls, all basically showing off what they do. So. Is
this like open to the public, or is it more open to the trade?
No, this was a one-off kind of event for us. But what I was going with this was that we got slightly spoilt on that front. But what we did do on the last night, on the Saturday night, was go to that area that Sophie mentioned,
Monastiraki, yeah.
Which is pretty much in the center of town, and from there is a whole set of little streets and sort of street markets. I mean, it's really mostly shops, but it's There's all sorts of things there, including lots of foods. So again, it's not quite a market, Ron, but it is somewhere that's definitely worth going. Can you remember, Sophie, the name of that street area there?
Oh no, I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, no, it was a definite kind of recognised area, because not least because the street association, basically gave us all special rates in their shops and things as we went up. So that was.
That street we were on was pretty touristy, but then if you stay in that area and you take like the little side streets, there's plenty of bars and little restaurants as well. And also, if you check the menus there, you see the prices drop immediately. It's not that it's very expensive in the touristy areas, but for Greece it is, because food in Greece, I found, is not expensive at all.
So outside the tourist areas, you're saying just outside, you're saying the price is cheaper. What, for example, what would be a cost of an average meal, let's say a lunch meal, over outside the tourist area in Athens?
I had a big Greek salad, and with big I mean like really a full plate with a big chunk of feta, with bread on the side for €4.50.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know about meat, because honestly I mostly ate vegetables and cheese when I was in Greece, but I didn't find it expensive at all. What I noticed especially, maybe not the food, but that the drinks got a lot more expensive when you went to the touristy areas. Like I paid €1.50 for a cola 2 times when I was in the little streets, and then when we looked at the menus in the more touristy areas like Plaka, it was €3 for a cola.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Because their food is so cheap that they want to get their money out of soft drinks.
Alistair, on your end on the seafood, what were you kind of paying for seafood?
Oh, well, it got a little more expensive depending where you were. But I think, as Sophie says, if you were outside the tourist area, I mean, the two examples I had were both, one of them was in Sarah, Lee, and Terry's hotel, so you can imagine the rates there, and the other one was at the, what's it called, the Horizonte's restaurant, which is at the top of Lycabettus Hill, so it's probably the best positioned restaurant in the entire city, and as such, its prices reflect that. So poor examples, but I think you could probably eat, some nice fish bream or something like that, a fish dish in a restaurant outside the tourist area, easily for €8, €9, €10, that kind of price. So. Yeah, it was certainly good. I should mention that because for me on day one, the very first thing I did, I wonder if I can find any images of it. I'll go and have a look in a second. Hold on. I went up the Lycabettus Hill, which is one of the things I think that's quite interesting about Athens is that it's a huge city in a very large kind of plain surrounded by mountains, and then in the middle of it, stuck up, there are a couple of hills, of which the Acropolis is the best known one. So it's kind of interesting. Let me just, here we are. Let me find my pictures, which I've got somewhere lined up. I did actually line them up, promise you. Oh God, no, I can't find them quickly now. I'll keep working on that. One of the first things I did was go with this tour up Lycabettus Hill, which is the taller of the main hills, tallest of the main hills, and there's a little chapel at the top, and that was a really worthwhile thing to do. And we've had this conversation before, I think, Mike. If you're coming to a city new for the first time, then getting up on high, and that might mean up a tall building, or it might mean up in this case, a hill, is always a good thing, because it kind of helps you get your bearings.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really useful thing to do. Now I think I might be able to show you. Okay, so can you see that? That's a
I can see the thumbnail of all the thumbnails, but I can't see the
I've seen
full
the main thing. Okay, this is not. This isn't going to work easily. I should have sorted this out beforehand. I'm trying to do it on the fly, and as you know, that never works well. So yeah, I went up this main hill. I think it's about 2,000 meters or so, and up at the top of it, there's this little chapel. We were up there for for sunset, and it was a chance, fantastic photo opportunity. Everybody was taking pictures like mad of the Acropolis down below us. But also there is a restaurant up there, and it's eating up there is really quite a thrill. But you need to, particularly in the summer season, you need to book it in advance because you can imagine it's pretty popular. I walked up and it half killed me. But it's only then when we were up there that I discovered there was actually a funicular railway that goes up and down every half hour. So we could have taken that. But yeah, that was really worthwhile. And the Horizontes restaurant was where we ate, and that I did actually put in the showcase things wherever they are. Here we are, this one here. So again, the audience should be able to see that on the top of the Lycabettus hill. Yeah, definitely the right thing to do. I don't know about you, Sophie. Did you get up Lycabettus?
No, I didn't make it up there. I didn't have the time, but it's definitely something I'm gonna do next time I'm in Athens. My flatmate actually she did the video workshop with Peter Parker, and that was somewhere halfway up the hill, and she walked there in the morning, and she said it nearly killed her as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, she decided not to go back with me in the afternoon, and we just did some other parts of the city.
It is, but when you get up there, it's a spectacular view, and you can see literally the whole of Athens right the way up to the mountains. I guess about sort of 15 miles away. One of the things that we were talking about before we came on air was about the weather, because while we were there, it's deviated, isn't it? Always the way. I mean, what is the phrase most often heard by any travel journalist or blogger? It has to be, "Oh, it's never like this. This is really unusual weather." And sure enough, 800 bloggers turn up, and they had it was the tail end of that what was it, hurricane that trashed the Bahamas and then came across Europe. It kind of apparently sort of built up speed again and whipped around, and it really dumped on Athens. And there was the one night when it was absolutely tipping it down. I got drenched, and most of us got drenched. But in the afternoon, it had already fallen up on those hills on the outskirts of Athens in the northwest to such an extent that the devastation made item 4 headline on BBC World News, because literally there were cars just being swept down these narrow streets. It was complete disaster up there. So that was quite dramatic. But it is, if you go up any of those hills, you do get a chance to see Athens, and it's a stunning city to look down on. You went, Sophie, to the Acropolis.
Yes, I did. That was not too high.
Not too high, but tell us what you thought.
I really liked it, but I wasn't as impressed as I expected to be.
Why not?
I'm not sure. I guess I thought it would be even bigger than it was. I'm not sure. I mean, it's such an icon, I think it must be like for some people when they see the Eiffel Tower for the first time, or I don't know. It's just you have this image of it, this almost heroic movie-like image, and then it's a place where you can just walk around and a building that you can just capture on camera. So it was really cool. It was really impressive.
And you got to walk around all through it, or only parts of it, or was it open access?
Yeah, we got in by the entrance by the metro stop Acropolis, so we could walk uphill, then we passed the theater, then you could go up even more to the Pantheon, and then you had the view over the entire city. There were some small buildings there that you could see that were for maintenance workers, of course, But yeah, I think we pretty much got to walk around all over it.
So you got to go to through the Parthenon and walk through it, and like,
No.
did you walk through the
No,
amphitheater?
not you couldn't go walk through there, but you could walk all around it.
Oh, okay.
They're working on it at the moment. So
Yeah, they're renovating it.
the middle of the Parthenon is full of cranes and stacks of stone and materials and things like that. So you can walk around the outside of it, and it isn't. For me, it was. It wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't one of those fantastic experiences, largely because it's. I mean, I went late in the afternoon deliberately because I was told that during the course of the daytime it can really get very packed, and so I thought I would go when it was a bit quieter, and even then it was pretty busy. As Sophie says, what happens is if you get off at the tube station, there's these long slopes. Basically, there's a long slope up one way and then up the other, where you walk up. In fact, there's one of those those dreadful. I don't know what you call them. They look like toy trains. It's a car that trails tourist carriages, and they take people up most of the sort of the journey, but halfway up the first slope is the entrance to the new museum, the Acropolis Museum, and that's very definitely worth taking a look at. That's only a couple of years old, and they've invested a lot of money and thought into it. It's built over some of the original ruins that they've excavated, houses and a street and things like that. So everywhere you walk, both outside the building and in, quite often you're walking on these great big glass panels, because underneath you, by several feet, are these excavations. And then the museum actually has much of the artwork from the Parthenon and its the various buildings on the Acropolis, and has them laid out in a very nice or spacious way. It's definitely worth taking a look.
And is there like, is it just the cost to get into the museum and all the rest of the stuff is like open or free, or do you pay like one price for everything, or?
Do you know, I had that very same conversation with the woman at the ticket desk in the museum, because I said, "What could I get a combined ticket for both the museum and the Acropolis?" And the answer is no, which is daft. So I forget how much it was. I think it was
It was €12 for the Acropolis alone, I believe.
Yes, for the Acropolis it was 12, but for the museum it was, I can't remember, it was 5 or 8, I think. 5 or 8 euros. I can't remember which. I've probably got the ticket somewhere.
So was there any more? Like you said, there was an amphitheater. Was that open?
Yeah, that's
on
the. So if you leave the museum again and keep walking up these slopes, on the side of the Acropolis, before you get to the top where the entrance is and where you climb finally onto the top, there is this spectacular amphitheater, and that's well, you can see that for you can't go in it, but you can see it for free because you can walk around the top of it. And I took several photographs there as well. So.
But there's two, and there's one that you can go into, because there was the nice one. That one you couldn't go into, the one with the chest tiles.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the other one near the entrance as well, and that one you could walk around in.
Okay.
You couldn't, like, when you were downstairs, there was a bar, and it seemed like you couldn't go in, but then if you walked upstairs, you could descend into the theater.
Huh.
Yeah. Well, I could. And people there as well, so I don't think I was trespassing.
I'm just going to have another attempt at screen sharing. Can you see that?
No, I can't see it. I can see that now.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's the one you couldn't go into.
Yeah, that's the amphitheater, and where I'm standing there is at the top of it. So, and that's on the pathway up to the entrance to the Acropolis.
That's incredible.
So that's in the sense that that's open, and pretty spectacular.
Is that the one, Sophie, that you said you walked around in, or is that a different?
No, that was the one that you couldn't go into.
Okay. Wow. So besides, the amphitheater, the one, Sophie, you went to, this larger one we're seeing now, the Parthenon and the museum, or is there anything else on the Acropolis to see, or is that it, or?
Well, I don't know if you want to take it into account, but the view is amazing.
Okay.
You really get a 360 degrees view over Athens from the top. So that was definitely worthwhile as well, I think.
Let's see, there's a photo.
Yeah, I'm just putting up that's
Oh yeah, that you could see as well.
that's a photo I took from the Acropolis.
It looks like a miniature now that you have it on
It does.
photo.
It's a tilt shift effect, and that's the temple of Hephaestus, which is about, I guess, about sort of half a mile away from the Acropolis. So you do get some pretty amazing views. I'll just try and find.
Is that the same size as the Parthenon, or is that smaller, or?
Similar, I'd say smaller. Hard to tell because I didn't actually get down to it myself. But I would say just a little bit smaller. So here's another view. Again, this is tilt shift, I'm afraid. So but you get a sense of what it looks like there. Where's the thing gone? Here we go. Okay, so the views from, for example, from actually, let's go up to let's go to the museum. Here we are. So when we're talking about the museum, this is the new museum building. Can you see that one?
Yeah.
And that's quite clever because what they've done is they've built it with the top floor slightly sort of skew width, and the reasoning for that, and I'm trying to get it right in my head, is because the bottom of it is over these excavations, and so it kind of lines up with the excavations. But the top floor, which is where they're exhibiting most of the stuff from the Parthenon and the top of the Acropolis there, they've actually kind of put at an angle so that it mirrors the positioning as it would be if it's up there. If that makes sense. So it's quite a clever building in that sense. Find the here we are. Here's one of those by the entrance. Here's the part of the floor that's you can look down on. Sorry, can you see there? You can look down on from over the balcony, as it were. So that's unrestricted. But all of that you can see where it goes underneath there, underneath the building itself. It just continues on, and where I'm standing is all glass floor as well. So it's quite impressive. Find the Parthenon itself. Here we are. This is where, when you climb up finally to the top, this is what you're faced with. Can you see that?
Yeah.
This is what you're faced with, and you can see they're doing a major renovations there, and you can see all the fresh coloured stone on these pillars.
Quite a huge crane there. I mean, that you can see all the weights on it on the base.
Yeah. Major works of the
500-ton crane, if it's not more.
Well, it's heavy stuff, stone, isn't it? So,
yeah.
So there's a lot of building work up there, and so the inside of it is actually off limits because they're actually working in there. So
I'm just wondering, if that wasn't being renovated, how much of what the experience would be like. I'm sure the experience would be much better if you're able to walk in the middle and walk through it, as opposed to just kind of walking the perimeter.
Yeah, it would be lovely, but it's such is life at the moment. It's just bad timing, really. That's the inside there, so you can see there's another crane in there. Oh, hold on, excuse me. There. Yeah, so there's another crane in here. So it's when this work is finished, and maybe somebody from This Is Athens or Visit Greece will let us know. But when that work is finished, then no doubt you'll be able to go inside. Bear in mind, though, from memory of the drawings of it, actually it isn't. The building wasn't an open building all the way through. It was the case. You see here, where I'm not sure if you're. I'm looking at my screen, not the Hangout screen. But if you can see my cursor,
Right.
right here, this piece of stone here is one of the first blocks for the wall, because just inside the pillars there was actually a complete wall. So the inside of the thing was actually, inside a square block building, and the pillars were just like a sort of a walkway around the outside.
So it was just kind of an overhang. There was a
kind of well, there would be, yeah, there would be a sort of like a cloisters around the sides of it.
Yeah. Wow.
If that makes sense. So I mean, it would be. I'm not sure how far they're going to take it back, to be honest. But we'll see. So yeah, it's pretty impressive. Got a couple of other questions from Ron. This one here, he says, are there any examples of responsible tourism options in Athens? Oh dear, Ron, you do ask the tricky ones.
Yes, there is actually one, if I can step in, because I was talking with this lady who runs an ecologically responsible tour through Athens. She said, now I'm not quite sure what it was, but if you want, I can quickly search for her card and I can give you the details.
Okay, well maybe we can do that. Pop that in the show notes when we finish. And the other question he's got what are the local trending terms for travel in Athens? Is it cultural, eco, responsible? He says, I'm curious how locals define their own services and attractions to visitors. Yeah, actually, one of the things that I was struck with is that there does seem to have been a surge in the number of excursion operators, city tours, that kind of thing, from locals, from companies organised by locals, trying to get across exactly that local feel, introduce what it's like, to presenting a local's perspective of Athens. Dopios was one of those companies, DOPIOS, and there's another as well, the name of which temporarily escapes me. So that's something I'll try and put in the notes as well. But yes, there were several companies who were very keen to try and promote the insider's perspective, the local's perspective of what Athens is like.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, guys, I'm conscious we've been going for 45 minutes, and that's pretty much enough for everybody. Let's call it a day here. Unless there's anything else, Mike, you wanted to ask of us that we've obviously missed.
Yeah, I'm sure I have a lot of questions, but I think for now, I think you guys covered a fair amount, especially the sites, the transportation, some of the food options. So I think it was kind of a well-rounded show.
Good. Okay, excellent. Sophie, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure to see you again. Will you be going to World Travel Market, because that's what's happening?
No, I won't, and I'm so sorry that I'm not. So please don't remind me.
Okay. Well, next week is World Travel Market in London. It's an annual event, and it runs for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and many of us will be involved there. I'll be there all that period as well. So what I'm working up to saying in a roundabout way is that, rather like with Athens, there won't be a weekly edition as per normal in this slot, 5 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. Instead, if and when I get the chance, I'll try and do some at least one or two pop-up hangouts. So look out for that. It'll be as usual. It'll be at a few moments' notice. Maybe if I'm lucky, at 30 minutes' notice, but usually 15. And the one time I think I may do one will be actually on the Monday afternoon, circa 3 o'clock. And I say that because I know that I'm interviewing the Minister of Tourism for the Asturias region of Spain, and what I haven't suggested to him yet is that maybe we should do it as a hangout. So I'll see how that goes down. But so it may be one on Monday afternoon. Anyway, for now, guys, thanks ever so much, and to those watching, thank you for watching. So bye for now.
Right. See ya.